Hi to everyone and welcome to this Rexnord webinar. With us today is Jason Weber. Jason has been involved with software development for his entire 25-year career, from development at two software startups to product management, strategy development, M&A work, and partnering at a Fortune 500 industrial automation company. Since 2017, he's headed up the software development team focused on bringing the Internet of Things benefits to Rexnord's industrial leading power and motion control products. Jason graduated from the University of Illinois with a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science. Now, joining Jason today is John Judson. John has worked in the industrial tech sector for over 25 years for companies such as Rockwell Automation, General Electric, Belden, and Cisco. He currently is part of the Digital Solutions Group at Rexnord, helping to grow the Internet of Things business segment and expand Rexnord's digital portfolio. So Jason and John, welcome to today's event. And with that, I'll pass things along to you to get us started.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Rich. In the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to cover how condition-based monitoring actually changes everything in maintenance. What's in it for you, what's in it for your plant, things to consider as you look for the right monitoring solution, and then we're going to go through a little Q&A at the end here. Most of you are probably already familiar with the concept of condition-based maintenance. To be sure, we're going to be talking about all the same, we want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing here. So let's, just review some of the essentials that we're going to go over here, and I'm going to have Jason kind of touch on a little bit of that.
Thanks, John. Currently, the most common ways that we see people maintain their gear drives is they will, one of them is actually apathy. They just run it until it dies, and then they go and fix it. But we also see people, they do every 6 months they'll change the oil out. They'll just say at a certain time interval they go and change everything, or they'll send it in for service every 5 years, whether or not they know it needs to or not, just in case. We also see a lot of route-based inspection going on where either a third party will come in or they'll have specialized employees that'll go around every once a month or twice a month, hook up some sensors, see where vibration is. The challenge with that is you can miss a lot of things. So the new way, the way we're proposing that you do this is condition-based monitoring, where there's actually a system attached to the drive, 24/7 monitoring it, and the equipment alerts you when it needs service. On the gear drive, we have sensors for temperature, vibration, oil quality, low oil, and other sensors that we take that information, we synthesize actual results for you and direct you to what needs to be done to fix the drive.
So let's talk a little bit about the data. The best systems that are out there give you a lot more than just plain data. When issues come up, the system should tell you what kind of issues are happening, where within the equipment the issue is occurring, what kind of event it is, whether or not it's a serious event, whether or not it's a event that maybe can be placed later on down the road. These are the types of analytics that are actionable and provided back to individuals here to be able to monitor what's actually happening with their devices rather than any kind of scheduled base maintenance system. We provide a lot of reminders to the people who are maintaining these drives so that they can really take action when the action needs to be taken, actually. So if you look at, for instance, oil quality as an example, we've discovered that people are doing generally one of two things. They're either changing their oil too frequently or they're not changing their oil frequently enough. Both of them are expensive propositions. If you're throwing oil away, that adds up. If you're running your drive to some sort of failure because of low oil or bad oil, you're running into some serious issues there that could be even more expensive. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do things like tell you when the optimum time to maintain your drive and the various parts of that drive are, so that you're not just doing it on a route-based schedule. You're not just doing it as kind of by rote. You're doing it in an intelligent way so that you're addressing the problems as they're coming up before they become problems. So the shift to condition-based monitoring, it provides a lot of different benefits. I hit on a couple of those already. Digital monitoring kind of takes a lot of the pressure off you. It provides a remote method of being able to monitor your drives. That way you can take the resources that you have and apply them to where they're actually needed rather than having them just kind of going around on a paper route and just doing rote-based work. These are the things that will help you with your scheduling of your personnel, as well as the budgeting of your resources. Keeping equipment, of course, operating properly also helps maintain your safety. And you save money overall on just generally maintaining your drives when the issues are needed to be maintained rather than kind of as in a reactive mode. So the result obviously would be greater productivity, and this is why you're seeing plants all over the world, not just on drives, because actually if you look at most of the drives that are out there, they're the last piece of the puzzle that have been put into any kind of a monitoring system. So just about everything on a plant floor that moves out there is being monitored in some sense, and now you'll be able to add your drives to that. So let's take a closer look at what you're going to get out of that.
Yeah, let's talk about the benefits, John. One of the best things that you get is you can catch issues early. We talked a little bit about route-based monitoring earlier, and we talked about apathy as a problem. But one of the things that you get with 24/7 monitoring is if something starts to creep up, we've seen issues that can happen in a 24-hour period. Some of these drives, if properly maintained, can last for decades. We actually had a customer, and this is kind of funny, that installed a drive without monitoring, and they didn't put oil in it. The drive ran for 3 days without oil. It was amazing. So these things are very, very hardy pieces of equipment. But you can have something occur. You can have something strike the drive and actually cause an oil leak. And you need to catch that immediately. Otherwise, you evidently have 3 days to catch it. You can choose when you respond. The whole point isn't to say that you have 3 days to deal with this. The point is to give you enough time so that you can maintain your drive and properly care for it at a scheduled downtime time slot that occurs. We want to help you reduce the number of inspection downtimes that you or shutdowns that you have in order to make sure that you can be up as much as possible. And really, the biggest cost saver is reducing your unplanned downtime. If we can take care of that, it saves the system pays for itself almost instantly. The other thing that we do that a lot of people don't think about is increasing safety. Some of these drives are in really hard to get to locations, really dirty locations that you need to shut down equipment around them in order to actually get to them and inspect them. So keeping your personnel in a place where they're safe and can monitor and make sure that you have as much uptime as possible really is important in this system.
So, Jason, that's a good point, and let's talk about that a moment. If you take a look at one of our big customers, and it's somebody we'll touch on later on in the presentation here. It's a mining customer. It's one of the largest coal mines in the world. It's 750 feet underground. They literally have miles and miles of tunnels. The underground portion of this mine is actually bigger than some of our large cities. When you take a look at that, and you take a look at the challenges about that, maintaining those drives safely and maintaining them timely is actually a serious concern of theirs. So the need, so we want to help the customers eliminate the need to check critical equipment in person, because in the case of, say, one of these mines, you're literally driving several miles down a tunnel to actually get to these things to be able to do any kind of manual monitoring. And in some of these cases, they literally have hundreds of these drives underground. So it is a challenge, and it's something that remote monitoring can help them do safely and help them do efficiently. So smart monitoring allows them to check the equipment remotely. It allows them to apply the resources exactly where they're needed. They're not sending somebody way down the tunnel for half a day to go check on drives. They're actually able to see the information right there on the screen. So it's kind of like a preventative maintenance, you might say, with a triage focus.
I'm going to add just a little bit to that cut maintenance spending slide and talk a little bit about the issue with the route-based maintenance. In the previous slide, I talked about the fact that problems can happen quickly, and if you are out there only inspecting your equipment every 2 weeks, if something happens in between or if there's a spike that may be intermittent that you just don't happen to be there at that time, you can miss that. And that really can be important, especially for something that happens quickly. One of the things we also talk about with our customers is meeting their key performance indicators or KPIs. There's a lot of standards that the reliability team is being held to around safety, reliability, uptime. Everybody has productivity improvement goals, managing your assets, and even digitization that this system can help you achieve. I'll spend a moment explaining this last slide here around cost considerations. If you look at the time-based replacement of oil. We use the oil change again, and John mentioned this earlier. If you replace the early and often, you're going to spend a lot more money maintaining your equipment than you really need to. If you go far to the right on the graph and you run to failure, all of a sudden you're going to have extensive downtime if you don't have a spare drive, for instance, but you'll save money on the maintenance costs. So the blue line will drop and the red line will go up. What you really want to do is get to the center there where your total cost is as low as possible. You want to optimize that. So you only want to do the oil changes. You only want to send it in for service when it really needs it. But before it becomes a real problem and costs you thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of unplanned downtime. So the reality. How do you choose the right monitoring system? There's a lot of different choices you have right now. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of some of the different pieces that you can do. I talked a little bit about having a third party come in, install their system. They can do full-time monitoring 24/7 by a third party. Less expensive, and you get a professional installation and professional review. You get a very fancy report. A lot of the challenges with that is they do not know the Rexnord drives as well as Rexnord engineers do. The condition monitoring system from Rexnord is built and designed by Rexnord engineers who have years, decades of expertise on our drives. They may still require spot checks. It may become warnings. It may even miss some issues. And honestly, not every customer, larger customers definitely do, but not every customer has on-site expertise to interpret the data that you get from that. Another thing that we see a lot of customers do is they put a whole bunch of different sensors on the drives and they monitor it themselves. The challenge is, and what we've learned as we were designing this, is the placement of an accelerometer can be very important to picking up all of the various harmonics that occur in the vibration. And if you don't know precisely where to put it, you don't get that. Another thing that we offer is we actually on some of our drives will drill up to the bearing race so we get actual bearing race temperature. And unless you really know what you're doing, you don't want to drill through the case of your drive. You need on-site expertise to be able to do one of these systems effectively, and there are a lot of customers that's an expense that they just don't have the luxury of spending.
So when you look at this, Jason, it's actually kind of interesting. You can have somebody come in and do checks, or you can have your own internal people do checks. But some of those checks are relevant only for the moment, and some of them are actually historic. So if you take a look at, for instance, oil sampling. Oil sampling is taken, and then a sample is sent out. A couple weeks later, you might get a sample back with the results. That data is historic to 2 weeks ago. It doesn't tell you what the status of your oil is now. Same thing with vibration sampling. If you've got folks that are out there doing a vibration check, it tells you what the vibration is at the moment, but it's not telling you over time where that vibration is heading, or it's not even telling you whether or not that's considered bad vibration. So what we have here is a third option, and it's an offering that Rexnord has here. It's our smart condition monitoring system, and what this does is it provides 24/7 monitoring, and it allows the operators to be able to view trends, view things as they begin to build up, and be able to be notified when things happen before they actually become a critical event. So these are real-time alerts of potential issues, and it allows you actually to analyze what's happening right now as well as where it's going, so that you can actually, rather than do a historical analysis, do more of a future analysis. You're going to kind of look into the future here and see where you're heading. And more importantly, you're going to determine very quickly whether these issues are problematic to the drive itself. Vibration is vibration. It may be a good vibration, it may be a bad vibration, it may be an agnostic vibration to the drive. Rexnord knows the metallurgy of our drives, we know the construction of our drives, we know what capabilities they're able to withstand, what type of frequencies, what type of vibrations they're able to withstand. And so the analytics we provide back are actionable. They're pointing the operators in the direction that they are. So there's data, and then there's analytics. Data needs to be massaged. It needs to be analyzed. A lot of people will take that data, they'll put it into a third-party stats program, and you can still do that kind of an analysis even with our own system, where you're taking data from, say, our PLC feed and running it through a third-party stats program for further analysis. But we provide, more importantly, actionable analytics that the operators can understand and use right now, rather than having to figure out what that data means, how it needs to be analyzed, and more importantly, what it means to the drive and whether or not it's something maybe should be concerned about.
Exactly. The actionable insights that we provide are critical for our customers. What we do is we take all that raw data, and we know that a lot of our customers are used to seeing a ton of raw data and think that that's value. No, the value is keeping your production up and running. So what we do is we take that raw data, and for example, oil. We actually synthesize when the oil needs to be changed based on the impedance of the oil, the temperature of the oil, the RPM of the drive as it moves forward, the relative humidity of the oil, and we bring that down to a simple percentage of oil life. And what we're saying is once that gets below a certain percentage, we'll start a countdown timer and recommend that you change the oil within the month. That gives you enough time to schedule it during scheduled downtime. You're not out there constantly once a month sampling oil. Another example is vibration. We take vibration and we sample it, and we know based on the RPM of the drive and the gearing of the drive exactly what certain frequencies mean, and we have set points so that, say, you have an issue with your gear mesh because you have a soft foot or you have an alignment issue on the drive. We don't just tell you you have 400 hertz spiking. We go through and provide you need to check the alignment because you have high vibration, or you have other issues. You have a bearing that's going out because you have bad vibration. The other thing we do is we provide you that data in the context that you expect it in. Locally on the drive, we have an andon light. If the andon light is green, everything is fine. If it's yellow, we know that there is something that you need to take care of at a certain point in time in the near future. And if it's red, you have a decision to whether or not you want to shut down production to take care of your drive, or if production is more important. And honestly, we've had customers that have chosen production over the drive because they've had sudden things that have occurred. Usually it's damage, external damage to the drive that causes an issue, but it happens suddenly and they decide production is it's safer and less costly to cut or to continue production than it is to do more damage to the drive. So it's very important to put that in the right place. So we have the andon light. We also output to your local control system, your PLC. You've spent millions of dollars implementing a control system in your plant, and usually it drives an operating room or an operator room or control room, and warnings and alerts and notifications to your maintenance personnel. We can pump that straight to it. And then and in all the major forms that you're used to. We support Ethernet IP, Profinet, as well as Modbus TCP. And then as a third option, you can log into the Rexnord Connect portal. You can look at the current state of all of your assets. You can sign up for email alerts. You can also sign up for SMS text alerts.
So one of the things that any of these systems should be able to do is kind of grow with you as you grow. What we're finding a lot of these people are doing within their facilities are they're taking a look when they look at their initial layout of any kind of condition monitoring system. They're selecting among their number of drives, and in the case of that mining example, as a reference point, there's hundreds of drives. Where do you start? So the best place to start is with your critical assets, the assets that if they went down would cause the most grief to you and your plant and your production. So we see people being able to select a smaller number of drives to begin with, apply SCMS to those, and then be able to build their system out from there. There's also the ghost in the machine drives. We see this quite frequently. There's always some piece of equipment out there, whether it's a drive or somebody else's piece of equipment, anything that moves, there's always something out there that just there's a gremlin in it. There's something that you've never been able to understand why this particular device takes more maintenance than others. What this will allow you to do when you select those is attach this system to that and be able to sort these problems out and be able to determine where those issues are. So we find most people will start out with a select number of drives to begin with, the ones that are most critical or problematic to their production, and then begin to roll out the platform from there. And that's what we do. We have an easy installations platform that can be installed in a number of different ways by a number of different people, including the people within your own facility. And then we allow you to expand as your needs expand and as your desire to expand your system allows you to do that and promotes it through your entire plant. So the idea here is as you begin to prove out the value of condition-based monitoring, you're going to actually be able to determine where you need to go next, where you want to do this, and Rexnord allows you the ability to do that. We also have the idea here is our system that we develop here has been developed by the same engineers that work on the drives themselves. So these are the people who understand the metallurgy of the drives. I've talked about that a little bit earlier. They understand how the construction of the drive. They understand the gear mesh ratios. They understand the bearing functionality within the system and what they're able to maintain. They understand the drives. And that's why a condition-based monitoring system over a generic-based system, a condition-based monitoring system coming from, say, Rexnord will be able to tell you in more detail and more accurately what's happening with your drives rather than just some generic number that you might see out there. So we actually have really the expertise internally to understand what is important for our drives to be able to withstand and maintain, and we analyze that data and provide that actionable information back to you. We also include performance history and a lot of different analytics that are available so that you can break this down. And our system is subscription-based, and it's also cloud-based. So the idea behind that is no matter where you are, you will be able to analyze the condition of your plant and what's happening with your facility. And even if you have new folks that come on board, they're able to do that. The other thing that we talked about briefly earlier is who gets access to this data. The data is accessible by the people that you decide who need to have access. And this may be important. Maybe you have a certain team that does oil. Maybe you have a certain team that does vibration analysis. You can actually assign these things to those individuals so that they can actually understand what's important to them and be alerted on these issues, say oil quality monitoring, so that the oil team will see if there's something wrong with one of the drives or several of the drives, or the oil needs to be changed. So you can break this out by your team as well.
So, quick example, we'll call it that instead of a case study. We had a North American mining customer. And I talked earlier about the fact that unplanned downtime is really, really expensive. This particular mining customer, their mainline conveyor, if it went down, it's about $125,000 an hour. They had a condition monitoring system, ours, on all four of their drives that were attached to the mainline conveyor, and it showed that they had a vibration problem with one of their gear sets. They scheduled a planned downtime. They were able to stage everything so that the replacement drive was right next to the one that was going to be pulled out of service. They had the lifts and the cranes and the personnel all available, so it took them 4 hours to do that. It cost them $500,000 to take that line down for 4 hours. But had they not had that warning and the drive had failed unexpectedly, it would have taken them about 12 hours, they figure, because these drives are a half mile from the mine entrance. And the spare drives are another 5 miles from there, and they have to get the equipment down there. They thanked us for costing them only $500,000 as opposed to about $1.5 million. So the total savings was about $1 million, and a very grateful customer at that. Another story we heard from a customer is we were doing a presentation and we were talking about oil changes, and we explained how our system would let you know when you needed to have an oil change, and the customer we were talking to was routinely changing their oil every 6 months. And the maintenance manager we were talking about was like, hey, that's great. If I don't have to change until every 9 months, look at how much money I'm saving. And he started thinking, he's like, so what happens if it tells me I need to change my oil more often? And we just waited for a moment, and he goes, oh, okay, that's important to know too. And so he was happy about it. He understood the value of knowing where your oil actually is. And we understand that when you go out there and you take a sample and you get a really detailed report back, that looks really interesting, but what does it really tell you when all you need to know is I need to change my oil, or I don't need to change my oil, or maybe there's more water and I need to change out the breather. Those are all actionable insights. We're not trying to drown you in data. We're trying to simplify this as much as possible.
So we have another customer that we worked with here that actually it's problematic, and this happens with many customers as well. It's problematic actually to get to the drives. We talked about the mining opportunities. We talked about a couple other things, and we talked about safety. This particular customer has drives that are in just a nasty environment. It's constantly wet, and they're kind of back into the equipment where in order for anybody to actually go in and monitor that drive, the line would have to be, shut down adjacent to it. So this is kind of an opportunity for these drives to be able to be monitored in areas that are unsafe or areas that are difficult to get to, and the customer did appreciate that, and they thought that that was a great idea. From a safety perspective, you like to keep that 365 days or more since the last accident board at zero. So I mean, it's you definitely want to have that capability, and that's very important too from a cost perspective, employee downtime and employee injuries and things like that to maintain. So customers are very much drawn to a system like this because it helps them do this in a more hands-off way, so that they're not climbing up on towers and roping off and tying off so that they can get readings off of a drive in a hazardous snowstorm environment. This allows them to get the data remotely and in a more appropriate way and a more safe way. So digitization is growing. We've seen that again. Most of the equipment, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation here, is already being monitored. The drives now, one of the more critical components of your facility's production, now can also be monitored as well. So it's really completing the entire puzzle. So the sooner people act, the sooner they can begin to get these benefits that we talked about. And there's a lot of different pieces of information that's available to them. Our webinar will be available to share with other people within your facility. We're always here to answer your questions. You can always call and email at any time. And, of course, there's rexnord.com, which has a wealth of information. You see a link here specific to the Smart Condition Monitoring System. We have a ton of information up there, a ton of content, just about everything that you're going to need. We didn't really talk too much about security, but to the IT people in any of these types of systems, it's a critical component. And Rexnord actually has taken a lot of different steps to lock down their cloud and to lock down the ability of the system to withstand any kind of outside attacks or interference. All that kind of information is up and available at our website as well, so that the IT personnel can take a look at how we address security. We use some of the tightest security protocols in the industry, and when the system is very locked down and very hardened against any kind of outside interference, and you can find more information about that at the website as well. So please do visit rexnord.com, and we'd be happy to take questions now.
Yeah, John, so it looks like we've got our first question. I think this is a good one for you to answer. Is this available for new drives, or can I upgrade my current drives?
So we actually have a number of different ways to do this, and this is kind of interesting. We've expanded the options actually just within the last several months. Our first option that we have is we can send personnel on site to be able to go in and get it to the drive and retrofit these right where they sit. We can do that. Really, the only thing that's required to do that is actually to have the drive locked out and the oil drained on the system. It takes, we allocate about 8 hours for the install, but in reality, I've seen it between 3 and 4 hours, so it's a very quick process. And again, we can do those right where they sit. Those are for existing drives that you have in your facility. Second method that we can do this with the existing drives is if you're sending drives to Falk Renew for repair, we can actually take those drives and apply the SCMS system to them when we have them on our site. A third method for your existing current drives is that we can provide through either service organizations that you work with or even internally within your own company, we can provide retrofit kits where you can retrofit the drives yourself. We provide extensive training for you to be able to understand how to do it efficiently and easily. And we just offer the kits as something that you can get on your own and have your own people install them. Or if you work through any kind of third-party repair shops or OEMs or anything like that, we can offer that service to them as well so that they can do it on their site. Lastly, we do this on our new drives. So anytime you see a new drive quote come from Rexnord, you're going to see a line item now that will include SCMS. It's still an option, but you can choose that as a new option or an option for a new drive when you order your drive. So we really do have it all covered from existing drives to current new drives, and we're adding new drives to this system as we go. There's tons of new content that's going to be, or new capability that's going to be available here across the Rexnord product set as we go forward.
Thanks, John. The next question I'll take, people want a little bit more information about how we handle security, and I'm going to tie that in with a separate question about whether or not an Ethernet connection is actually required. And we'll start with the Ethernet question. Ethernet is the preferred way to connect to the cloud. It is the most reliable way. It is fairly simple. It requires your IT department, and I know that it's a lot easier not to talk to our IT departments, but it does require our IT department to open up a couple of ports in order to, or a couple of, we need to whitelist some addresses is really what we need to do. It is not a hard process, and we can certainly walk them through it. But that's the easiest way to do it and the most reliable way. We also provide cellular connectivity if you need it, if it is required. It is not the preferred way, especially if you're inside of a plant, which tends to be a metal box, and cellular signals do not work very well in plants. There's also a lot of electrical interference. A wired Ethernet connection is preferred, but especially for remote locations, we do this a lot in open pit mines where Ethernet is hard to get to, but and we can get a cellular connection. And the antenna on our edge device is certainly better than that on your cell phone. For security, one of the best resources we have is we actually wrote a white paper on what we recommend and what we require around security. As John mentioned, we do use industry best practices around security. Everything's encrypted. The edge device will not actually respond to an unsolicited ping for you IT types out there, which means that if somebody out external to the organization reaches out to the edge device, it will not respond. It only initiates calls. We also have, we're using top-end cloud infrastructure with multi-factor authentication and all the other things. We've also had a third party come out and test our system and give us a report, and we've addressed everything that they have found. So we have high-end security if that's ever a concern.
So Jason, I do want to mention one thing on to the Ethernet connectivity question, and that's Wi-Fi. We do not currently provide 802.11 Wi-Fi connectivity on our devices. It's something that we're taking a closer look at because we do have customers that are very much interested in that and are actually using it on their own. So this is it's a straight up Ethernet connection. You can connect this to any kind of a Wi-Fi router and run a signal. And a good example is the mining example that we talked about earlier. When you're underground, obviously cellular is not going to work. It is problematic sometimes to run long strings of Ethernet cable throughout the tunnels where they can sometimes be several miles. But a lot of these tunnels do have what's called leaky cable. And leaky cable is essentially a long cable that acts as an antenna and can provide network signal connectivity. So in these underground mines, we do see people using Wi-Fi as a means to connect these systems without having to use hardwire Ethernet. So it is another option that's available out there. Going on to the next question here, do we offer condition monitoring equipment for equipment other than Rexnord? The answer to that right now is no. However, we're working in that direction. The idea here is to have a comprehensive system across the board that handles not only the bulk of Rexnord's motion equipment, but also looks at various other pieces of equipment. We're getting a lot of requests for that. So these are things like bearings and other companies' drives and pumps and things like that. You know, the solution hasn't been finalized yet, but we are working in that direction.
It looks like we have one last question here, and it's a forward-looking one. Do you offer condition monitoring on products other than gear drives? And the answer is currently no, but I'll share with you that our roadmap includes condition monitoring on everything that Rexnord owns, including bearings and couplings, industrial chain, conveyance solutions. So we will have those solutions eventually, and we will be providing full-on system monitoring and not just individual drive monitoring in the future. So stay tuned. It's pretty exciting time that's coming. So it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. So John, I'd like to thank you for taking the time. I'd like to thank our audience for taking the time. We really appreciate it. We know your time is valuable, and we hope you've learned something.
And we want to thank our producer, Lauren, for being an important part of this production. And thanks again, Jason, for being part of this as well and let me take part.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks for a great presentation. Jason and John, thanks so much for taking the time to be here with all of us today. And we'd certainly like to say a special thank you to all of our audience members for being part of this webinar event. Take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.